This episode of the Multi-Point Inspection Podcast is brought to you by Vesperio. Vesperio's Performance Academy offers custom-tailored solutions for service advisors and leaders. From the people who help you know your competition, InteliChek presents the Multi-Point Inspection Podcast. The Multi-Point Inspection Podcast brings you news and stories from the automotive world told in an informative and entertaining way. As 2024 comes to a close, I invited Kyle and Tom from Vesperio Performance for an encore interview to talk about what 2025 has in store for dealerships and their fixed ops departments. And according to the guys, 2025 will continue the trend of dealerships focusing on profit margins and weeding out inefficiencies, especially with reconditioning used vehicles. They say dealerships are also focusing on optimizing the existing traffic in the store versus driving more traffic, building a deep bench with their teams, and the ever-persistent problem of high turnover rates. The guys at Vesperio Performance have been back at the drawing board looking for the best solutions to these challenges and have returned to the Multi-Point Inspection Podcast to share their insights as well as some success stories.
Tom Fennen, one of the co-founders of Vesperio Performance.
Kyle Newsom with Vesperio Performance.
So what does 2025 have in store for dealerships? Kyle Newsom.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we're seeing, Brandon, and thanks for having us back. We always enjoy these conversations. But one of the biggest things we're seeing is really that shift back to focus on fixed operations. We're out of this. We're the post-COVID, right? We're kind of getting back to, we'll call it normal, okay? But it's really putting that emphasis back on profit margins and fixed operations, like growing and paying attention and developing our fixed operations performance and profit. And so, we're seeing rising cost of new vehicles, used vehicles. The gap is larger than ever between new and used. There's a significant focus when we get into that on the fixed ops side when it comes to reconditioning these cars and getting them frontline ready. Being a good partner to that used car department just highlights going into 2025. I mean, we had to have a fantastic process put in place. And then we're seeing a lot of fixed ops inefficiencies. Some of this stuff is overlooked, or it's really something that presents a big opportunity, but maybe we're not focused on it in the way that we should be focused on. We're seeing a lot of that with some of the dealerships where, we call it a limited belief, right? Where it's just kind of the norm, right? Or we constantly do this, or this is our norm. This is what our dealership does. We have X amount of bays. This is just what we do, right? We can't do anything until we grow. We need more bays, or we need more repair orders. That's always a common one that we hear, when in reality, are we optimizing what we already have coming in? A lot of times that's a big opportunity. So I think there's some key challenges going into 2025, kind of finishing up the year here and then going into 2025 that really are huge opportunities.
And about that reconditioning piece of the puzzle, Tom Fennen.
It's all about communication, right? Especially in that process. And one of the big factors that we really convey with our stores on the fixed side is what the variable department is up against, right? There's always this clock ticking on those used cars, right? They're all very unique. Each one is, a unicorn per se, but, that value of those used cars is a tricky proposition right now. Tomorrow, next week, what they purchase that used car could go up, it could go down. So really focusing on that traditional 3-day turn, but really making sure the fixed department really understand what that is costing, not only the variable department, but the whole dealership by not being a good partner and getting those cars out, in that 3-day turn.
Tom says that dealerships can no longer afford to be reactive. They must be proactive in their approach to doing business.
I think with all the tailwinds, Kyle alluded to it, prior to 2024, even the beginning of 2024 reality, where as long as you react it in any fashion, you were going to be successful within a dealership environment. The interest rates were super low. There's a high amount of value on the new side per vehicle, which was something traditionally, just didn't happen. Of course, you had the used car opportunity. And I think what happens a lot of times in that environment is the dealerships, even on the fixed side, are successful, but they're not really clear on how they had that success. Right. So when they run into problems, they can't go back and say, okay, hey, here's how we got to pivot. Here's how we got to change what we're doing and thinking, to your point, being more proactive, and they freeze. They don't know exactly where to turn and what to do. And you double down that effect with turnover, which has always been a fight on the fixed side, really has, I think, gotten worse in 2024. Because now with the pressure of fix having to make up the difference of some of that profitability that is disappearing a little bit on some of the dealerships on the front end, they don't know how to, again, do what they need to do to be able to improve. They kind of focus on the, why is this report inaccurate, or, why is, this portion not right, instead of, hey, what can I do to help improve and, be a really good partner, for the dealership, from the fixed side. Turnover creates a lot of stress and a lot of, bad decisions, and it's not any fault of anybody else. They're just, either new to the position, or, that amount of turnover creates a lot of additional pressure, whether it's not having enough advisors, technicians, in any of those key positions.
Going back, just to your whole point of reactive versus proactive, right? We're trying to be proactive in our management style, proactive as an advisor every single day. And what we often see or run into is we're always in that reactive mode. We're always putting out fires. We're hardly ever looking for the arsonist, but dang, we're good at putting out those fires, right? And I think the reality is it always usually comes back to, anytime I know that we're dealing with the dealership, is if you kind of back up just a little bit and you say, okay, well, what was the goal for today? What was the goal for the month? Have we broke it down? We use SMART goals a lot, right? We want them to be specific. We want them to be measurable, attainable, and then relevant, and then time bound, obviously. So the big thing there is it's just backing it up to where I know what I'm supposed to do every single day. I have a target for the month, and I know the daily action, right? I've identified, I have some sort of daily action that I know if I achieve X, then I'm going to be successful. And then what's my daily accountability? We were just training this morning, and with a store, it's, we're already a week into the month. And one of the first questions is, hey, what's your goal for the month? They don't have one, right? I don't know. Okay, well, what should it be? Let's think about it. And then really diving into those using data to make a data-driven decision versus, oh, I think I want to do this, or I know I want to increase, right? Right now, forecasting, we come up on the end of the year, forecasting is always a big conversation. And Tom can allude to this, better than I can. And when we talk about the forecasting scenario, the common joke is, well, we'll just do 10% better, or just better than last year, or we're just going to grow, right? Or I don't know, what do you think we should do? What's the process, when we're doing that? And I think all that ties back to your comment, Brandon, about being reactive versus proactive in that scenario.
I mean, the big thing in forecasting too is recognizing those events for the future, and also thinking about, hey, what happened this year that we don't necessarily predict is going to happen next year? Was there a big opportunity that happened just because something, happened within my particular brand? Maybe had a huge recall that you don't necessarily are going to have in 2025. Or conversely, hey, maybe there's a dramatic weather event in a month that traditionally that doesn't happen. Well, when you're looking from year over year, month over month, well, hey, we're probably not going to forecast that big event's going to happen again. But a lot of that detail, and really the biggest missing piece, I think, in forecasting is the people side. Hey, we're going to do 20% more. The numbers are easy, right? Just put some math together and, you can make it make sense. However, how many technicians and how many advisors and parts people do we need to actually produce this forecast? That's where we really try to focus on the stores, is that people aspect. Obviously technician, advisor, and a parts person are all going to produce X on average, based off either brand benchmarks or the current store performance. Well, how many of those do you actually need in order to perform the forecast? And a lot of times we find, hey, you don't have enough people, or the people you do have, there's some productivity opportunity within those particular positions. And then that's what we work on to make the forecast mean something.
And about turnover in 2024, I asked the guys if one position had a higher turnover rate versus the other, say techs over advisors, or if it was a mixed bag.
I mean, add managers into that, right? Techs, advisors, managers. You said it earlier on LinkedIn. I don't think a day can go. I don't know when the last time I've looked at LinkedIn and I haven't seen at least 5 new congratulations on a new position, or I've started a new position, or I'm looking for a new position. And, a lot of it is management that we're seeing. A lot of these managers, there's a lot of service manager roles out there that are open right now where people are looking to get involved with a company. And it comes down to, we talked about that turnover just a little bit, but the reality is especially now, people want to work somewhere for a company that, one, has purpose. They feel like they have purpose, right? And they invest in their people to develop that individual. Because if that dealership or that dealership group isn't doing that, those 2 things at least, there's somebody else that is. Right. And I think that's part of that management turnover side, to where nobody likes to lose. Nobody wants to go work for a dealership that's in the bottom 10% and they're not actively trying or actively investing in increasing performance, increasing skill development within their entire team. Right. There's a lot of KPIs. They're probably getting hit over the head with KPIs. Right. That's pretty common. But the reality is I want to work somewhere that invests in me. I don't like to lose. Nobody likes to lose at the end of the day. That's why they have turnover, right? They're tired of losing, whether if it's a technician, an advisor, a BDC person, it doesn't matter. It's all the same. They're tired of losing. If they were winning at their role at that dealership, do you think they'd leave?
When you're thinking about development, even the bench, right? Because when you see these different opportunities, we'll call it LinkedIn, and, hey, I've started here, or, I think even more, we're seeing more dealer principals and owners reaching out to say, hey, I have this amazing position, even on the part side, which has really been an anomaly. The lowest turnover in any dealership historically is in the parts department. And you're seeing more and more ads for parts management, which I think a lot of it, again, it's that there isn't a real good development pipeline, within some of these dealerships, and it's, really a shame because, and sometimes you see that, these are large groups that are pushing, hey, we need a spectacular person for this amazing position, in this location. What happened to the pipeline? Right? What happened to the bench? And I think a lot of times when you're not continually looking at opportunity to develop, you don't have that bench. Right. You don't have that next player to come in, ideally, any of those transitions, it's because of retirement or promotion or, taking a bigger lateral move, so to speak, within a company. But unfortunately, a lot of the situations, they don't have that bench. But even more dangerous is they promote to failure because they don't have that immediate good process of developing the next manager. And we see a lot of that where you were just the best at this particular position. So now we're going to put you in charge of everybody else. And, that has a whole host of other complications, especially when you don't have, real good development processes.
Yeah. Well, recognizing, and Tom says this all the time, recognizing that it's okay to be the number one advisor, the best of the best at your job. That's okay. But we often view advancement in this automotive field as a promotion. Well, if I'm the best service advisor, I'm making great money, I've got great clients, good processes, good environment, maybe I don't want to be a manager, right? Maybe I'm really happy with what I'm doing right now. But unfortunately, in general sense, we look at it like you have to be promoted, right? That's what we celebrate. We celebrate the promotions. And we're not celebrating the amazing achievement that these guys and gals are doing every single day in their current roles.
Kyle says that dealerships should make sure they are making the most of the traffic they have coming into the service department before looking to drive more traffic through the bays.
It's really easy to just look at the numbers and say, okay, we need more traffic. If I drive more traffic, then clearly my numbers are going to go up. And at the end of the day, are we really taking care of the customers that are currently coming in? Are we optimizing the repair orders that we already have? why would I want to add more customers to that chaos if that's what's happening? If I'm not performing at the level I want to perform. Like we had a store recently where talking to an advisor, right? Doing a training with an advisor. And one of the problems they were facing is they couldn't get the customers to come back to the desk to finish the sale. Like the customer kept walking off. And so I'm like, well, that doesn't make, like, why would the customer just walk off after the service drive? I greeted them. Like, that's kind of weird, right? And so, we made them just repeat back, hey, what's your exact process? Oh, okay, well, I say hello. Here's my kind of script that I go through. And then I have them sign this. And then I'm like, well, wait a minute. Why did I sign anything? Like when I sign something, that means I'm done, right? Well, yeah. Okay. And so just by talking through that process and just slowing down and saying, okay, what's actually happening here? Because could you imagine if we took that dealership and dumped 50% more traffic onto it? What did we gain? We gained some chaos and guaranteed bad CSI, CXI, MPI, whatever you want to call it, right? Bad customer service is guaranteed to happen. And we really impacted the business in a negative way. And so looking at optimizing what the current repair order structure looks like, what's coming in, are we really kind of looking in the mirror and saying, all right, am I really doing everything I should be doing? Do I have a solid write-up process? Do my people know what they're supposed to sell and when they're supposed to sell it? Are they set up for success? Do I have an inspection process that gets a quality inspection to the customer? Easy communication line. Do I have a good active delivery process? There's so much that goes into it to where we feel often we kind of get in that rut, like you said, or we get in this position to where this is just the way it is. And then we just think we need to add more traffic. Well, that doesn't make a logical sense, does it?
You're really not in that situation valuing the customer's time. The customers now, I mean, obviously, price, especially, recent, economic situations, but the real reality is that, the time, valuing their time is really at a higher level than really what the price of something is. And when you just turn the volume up without consideration of the customers, how are we valuing their time currently? Hey, you may get a little initial boost, but you're going to pay for it later. I mean, how many times a year, ideally, does a customer come to a dealership in the service? 2.5? Well, if you've created a huge issue with that client, especially a brand new client, hey, you put a bunch of marketing out there. Hey, we haven't seen you in 2 years. Come on in. You're not going to notice the impact for 6-10 months. I mean, you're not going to notice that problem because, again, the next time they're supposed to come in, is about another or 6 or 10 months. So they're just not aware of that impact of just turning up the volume. I mean, ideally, you want both, right? You want to have great processes. So when you do turn that volume up and you bring new customers in, everybody's happy and we're retaining those new customers.
Focusing on that customer lifetime value, right? They're thinking about that. And oftentimes, like, look at your receptionist or your BDC when I call a dealership. When's the last time we could do it right now? We could pick up the phone and call any dealership, right? And what's that phone experience going to be like when we're trying to get to a service advisor or even when we're trying to book an appointment? Well, if I'm a new customer, right? Or if I'm your greatest customer ever, if I have a negative experience, thinking about how much I lost as a business owner, right? Or general manager, and I'm looking at net profit at the end of the day. Well, what did that transaction cost me? Because I didn't train my employee on how to handle that phone conversation.
I asked the guys for some success stories, and one involved a dealership using Vesperio Performance's training within the dealership as a recruitment tool.
Yeah, we're really appreciative, especially that location, but all locations that really see that immense amount of value in the development piece, that they are promoting the fact that if you come on board as a manager, you are not without support. Hey, we have this training program, we have this support, from us to guide you along the way, especially if you're a manager that, hey, you have a relative amount of experience, but maybe you're just not very comfortable with that particular brand. So you always have that uneasiness. Or, hey, I was a manager at a location, but I had this immense amount of other management support, and now I'm going to be by myself. Well, that's kind of a scary deal, right? Like, who can I lean on? We're obviously very appreciative that they thought that highly of our support to the dealership, that, hey, not only do you have all these great benefits, it's a great brand, here's a great area, great ownership, and we're going to have this development opportunity for you, with Vesperio.
And with doing that, I think it goes kind of back to what we talked about earlier with that turnover scenario as well. It ties into just that whole overall thought, because we're always, as dealers, right, general managers, fixed ops directors, it seems like they're looking for managers. To Tom's point, there's a service manager posting, there's a parts manager posting. It seems like every day, not hard to find, right? And so to me, when they offer that, it just kind of sparks a light bulb of like, well, hey, isn't this an amazing thought? If I'm a dealership and I'm looking for a manager, maybe there's a great service advisor somewhere, maybe there's a great shop foreman somewhere that's looking for that next step, but they're kind of cautious about it, right? I know going into that first management role, that is a heavy step. Regardless of what your past was, if you were the number one service advisor and you've been watching them for 15 years and you think you understand, well, when you're the last guy in line or last gal in line to make the decision, that is quite a bit different than being that previous position. So to me, when they start offering things like that, you have that transparency of, hey, we understand this is a big step coming into this role, and here's all the amazing benefits and things that we're going to offer. And oh, by the way, one of them is a complete support and training and professional development program that can guide you with any questions that you might have. Right? Because a lot of dealers and dealer groups, large, mid-sized dealer groups, they don't really have that structured opportunity to provide that one-on-one training, the resources, the tools. Because if I'm a new manager, hopefully that means that I'm a little bit of a self-starter. I'm kind of the go-getter. Well, usually those people are eager to learn, eager to do more. Well, if I had something that I could go into, like our online academy, and look at all these different resources, all these different trainings, download different guides, things that I could use and actually implement in my business. And I feel empowered as a leader to do that coming in as a new manager. And oh, by the way, if I get stuck or bump my head, I can pick up the phone or shoot an email or shoot a text to one of the guys or gals at Visperio. That's a pretty good feeling. So to me, it really widens the net. Like if I'm a GM or I own a bunch of dealerships, I'm looking at that like, hey, let's offer this everywhere, because now I'm casting a wider net and I'm going to start attracting some other talent that may have never applied.
Well, yeah, just having that support system. I mean, there's a lot of instances that, we run into working with some of these newer managers that they really are on the right track, like the things that they're thinking about, but because they don't have that depth of having that experience in the past, they're hesitant. If you've done something a number of times and have seen how it succeeds, and most importantly, see how it doesn't work, right, to be able to learn from that and then be able to pivot, there's a level of confidence when you make those decisions, right, because you've seen it happen before. Well, in these instances, it's brand new information. So even just to be able to have a support system where, hey, you're on the right track. Hey, let's do the math on that. Yep, you're right on that. And really get that confidence so they can make, that really good decision and be, most importantly, confident with their team, right? Because that's a lot of it, right? If the team does not believe that you're 100% sure of what we're about to do, it's a little tricky. So just, even just having that support system, because a lot of times they're on the right track. They just need that affirmation, confirmation. Hey, you know what? That's exactly right. That's how you should do that.
And I think that ties into one of the big things when we are creating Visperio is we wanted to make sure, one, it was obviously unique and something totally different. And we don't come into the store. So we provide all the tools, all the resources, all the guidance that you would ever need and want to empower yourself as a manager, a new manager, even as an advisor, right? Parts manager. We empower you to be the hero in the situation, to really develop and guide your team. Because the moment that we step into the store, instantly devalues that manager. We've seen it happen for decades. right? Every employee is looking around, what's going on, right? It instantly devalues the current management staff. That's just what happens. And so by providing it in this manner, we allow that employee, that new manager, even an existing manager that's just looking for that next level of performance, to have a tool and a resource to go to guide them to get to that next level and really develop and manage their team.
So I asked the guys what makes Vesperio Performance's training different than other training programs that are out there.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think the main difference is, one, the engagement process within the platform, right? There's a lot of interactiveness in the training. We often relate our training to diet and exercise. Like our program is diet and exercise. Anything that you have success in, there has to be some amount of work, right, for it to be sustainable. So there's a little bit of work that needs to get done. Not a lot, but a little bit of work. So the real difference that we have in the program is not only do we talk about the principle of an idea, which a lot of trainings do a great job of, hey, this is why, right? This is what this means. But we also get into the details, which a lot of them don't necessarily get to that piece of it, where, hey, not only this is why and how, we're going to show you how to actually do it. And we're going to give you the resources to execute on it. Every training advisor and manager, but specifically on the manager side, has multiple resources inside of the training itself, whether it's a template, whether it's a structured process that you can, manipulate on your own, or whether it's just an example of, hey, here's how you would want this to be laid out. We provide that. So when you get done the training, boom, you have a resource. You don't have to wait to have other time to figure out, well, I love that idea. I really understand why I should be doing it, but I really don't have a great amount of time to go create this. Well, hey, it's there for you. And more importantly, if you want that customized, depending on dealership needs, then we can customize it. And it only belongs to that particular dealership or group of stores, depending on the scenario there. But we remove that roadblock in our training, which I think is the biggest difference maker in the platform.
Yeah. I'm thinking, as Tom's talking about that, one of the groups has one store, and working with the general manager, and the general manager is just, we'll say, has a limited belief about opportunity because they know they're building a new store in 17 months. And I only have X amount of base, so I really can't do any more. Like, this is just it. There really isn't any opportunity because we're busy every day, and I'm just going to have to wait till I get a new store. Well, to Tom's point, one of those assets and trainings is all about capacity and utilization. That's one of our trainings that are in the system, is capacity versus utilization. Well, really breaking down and understanding, that's what really helped this general manager to open their eyes, is just going through the worksheet, right? Going through the asset of, okay, let's look at capacity. Because, hey, you might be 100% right, Mr. General Manager. There might not be any opportunity. Boy, I'd hate to be in that environment, but there might not be any opportunity, right? Let's look at it. Let's just go through the math, because the data doesn't lie. And so we break down and start looking at, okay, here's our capacity. This is the true capacity with what we have. And then here's our current performance and the utilization that we already have. And then we quantify the difference between the two. And all of a sudden, now we have this giant void, or this gap of performance. I'm not saying we have to get to 100%, but hey, what if we're at 50% utilization, which isn't uncommon, and then we can get it to 80% or 75%? Well, that's a very, very large gap and a huge net increase. When before the conversation, it was, I can't really improve anymore. We're just going to have to wait 17 months till we get a new store, till we have more bays. So I think I can bring in more traffic. Well, it goes back to optimizing what we already have. Are we really optimizing the bays that we have? Not just the customers, as well as the bays, the utilization processes. Are my technicians proficient? And to Tom's point, having those guides and those resources and those assets that you can actually download, because they take the training, they look at the training, but now I have something that I can physically print out. If you want to print it, you can do it electronically, whatever you want it to do, but I can put pen to paper and look at my store and say, okay, this is the reality. Here's the data. And in that particular case, obviously, it was eye-opening to that general manager and really helped the store in the long run. But it's a huge value add for these dealerships.
I'd like to thank Kyle Newsom and Tom Fennen for a most excellent interview. You can find the Multi-Point Inspection Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And be sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. It helps with the algorithm thingy. Executive producers for the Multi-Point Inspection Podcast are Melissa Marlette and Joe Gibson. It is written, produced, and narrated by me, Brandon Barnett. This episode's featured music is Perseverance by Reveille. And check out the full uncut interview on InteliChek's YouTube channel with even more success stories. This episode was made possible thanks to a proud partnership with Visperio, which provides tailored solutions to ignite automotive dealership fixed operations, performance, and profit.